exciting day to make it official, to have these three and to be able to talk about a couple other instrumental members of our staff that we've added. But I think it's important to make sure that you recognize some of the guys that have been a huge impact on me and our organization over the last couple of years. When you talk about Wade Phillips, Skip Pete, John Fossil, Matt Daniels, Jed Fish, and Ted Rath. And those 6 members, consider friends. They've done a great job within their roles, and they've been instrumental in a lot of the success that we've had. As we move forward, very excited about the opportunity to work with these 3 men right here. They each bring a unique skill set, but one of the things that is consistent with all these guys, they're great teachers, they're great human beings, and they inspire players, and they know how to connect. But I think there's a level of capacity and competency in football, but they also, when you talk to players they've worked with, when you talk to coaches, there's a connection and there's a character that exists that I think is what really makes them special. We're also very excited about adding Thomas Brown as our running back coach. He's a guy that I've known for a while. I remember, playing against him when he was like the top recruit in the country. And, he was a really good football player, and you can see why he seamlessly has transitioned to become a really good football coach. Another guy that has a lot of those traits and characteristics that you look for. We also added Jonathan Cooley, who will be helping out as a defensive quality control, was coaching the DBs at Akron. So in addition to these 3 guys, very excited about those 2, and we're looking forward to having a great atmosphere and environment in our building where it's a healthy competition. It reminds me a lot of some of the things that we had going back to early years in coaching at Washington, with the types of men that we have and how those environments can lead to, most importantly, helping the players reach their highest potential, but also have a healthy competition where you don't want to lag behind because these guys are always working to get better, and excited to have those guys to be able to work with them. Gary, go ahead, my man.
So this is the first time we've had to speak with you since the end of the season.
Yep.
And so what went into your decision not to retain Wade?
Yeah, I think that, really when you get down to it, he did so many great things for us over the last 3 years. It really wasn't anything in particular, but very excited about what Brandon will add. I think his ability to work in unison with our coaching staff that's currently in place. You look at the foundation that Wade was instrumental in establishing. And I think, Brandon has done a great job. I've really enjoyed sitting in on some of these meetings and watching the collaboration of Brandon's leadership with the coaches that we've had in place and figuring out what's the best way to put it together for our players.
How does that conversation go with the guy who's been in the league forever? You're a young coach.
Sure.
You're established now, but how do you even handle that kind of situation?
Yeah, nothing but gratitude. And I think you guys all know Wade, just appreciative. Letting him know exactly, what we're doing, and he couldn't have been more of a pro about it, and it continues to epitomize what makes him special. And so, what I'm not, what I think I'll always, be indebted to Wade for is when the Rams decided to take a chance on hiring a coach that's 30 years old, unproven. I think one of the major reasons that there was a comfort level is because Wade Phillips is coming and the credibility that brought, and then also what he's meant to me over the last 3 years. So, nothing but appreciation, and he handled it exactly like I think you would expect. Nothing but class, and I'm forever thankful for Wade.
Sean, where would you like to go toward with the defense now? Like either whether it's changes, philosophy, or that sort of thing. Where are you headed with that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is predicated on what Brandon's vision is. I think there's a very similar philosophical approach to the game. Whether it be offense or defense. Staying in tune, some of his experiences and, just getting to know him, hearing what he's about. And then when you talk football, I'd like to think that I love football as much as anybody, but, you're sitting there, you're thinking, this guy might be sicker than I am. And it's fun to do that. And I think those are things that remain to be seen, Rich. We're really looking at it. It always starts with the players, and Brandon will be the first to tell you that. And how do we maximize some of our players? That was one of the things that was very intriguing. When Brandon came in, there was a clear-cut vision for all of our players and how he saw the ability to accentuate their skill sets within the framework of a sound foundation. There'll be a lot of similarities, and then there'll be some nuances, but I'm excited about seeing how that thing unfolds.
Brandon wasn't necessarily a name that a lot of us knew about, my Brandon.
Hi.
But how did he come across your radar, and how did
Yeah, that's a good question, Lindsay. I think the thing that I would say is it's a small network of coaches. And when you talk to people that you really value their input and they're not going to say things about people unless they genuinely believe it, you hear the word of mouth references. There's some similar people that I really hold in high regard when they give you an opinion on somebody. And then when you meet them, did a great job there. But I think when you look at the system, especially with the success that a Vic Fangio led defense has had over the course of, a really elongated period of time, and Vic is a coach that I really respect, hold in high regard. And when you listen to the things he says about Brandon Staley, when you listen to the people that I've come in close contact with that have been around him, when you look at the background, it's impressive, and you can feel the passion. And I think our players, and I know our coaches, have felt that in the initial introduction to him, and those are things that very excited about.
Brandon, I wonder if you could tell us what you see in the Rams defense from last season, what your thoughts are on where it goes from here.
Well, certainly a lot of respect for the players and the coaches here. We faced these guys in 2018 in that game where there was a lot at stake. It was a primetime game, and they were on a run, and we were on a run. So I was very familiar, in 2018 with a lot of the players on the team. And then this year, Sean's just a guy that I've held in such high regard for so many years. And as a defensive coach, you're always trying to stay ahead. You're always trying to anticipate, where the NFL is going. And so it was always an offense that you had to be aware of, a team that you had to be aware of. And, Chris Shula is one of my good friends, so I've always, kind of kept in touch with the Rams, their personnel, their players. And, since, Sean came here in 2017, there's just been an explosion here where football, overnight the Rams just became, one of the premier teams in the NFL. So I would say that I was very familiar with the players going into this process, and then, preparing for the interview, gained even more perspective. And I think that's what makes this opportunity so attractive.
Is there a challenge in just following a guy like Wade Phillips and the kind of culture he built with players and the reputation that name carries?
Yeah, well, I certainly have so much respect for Wade. I'm coming from Denver, where certainly he built such a big legacy as a defensive coordinator and as a head coach. And I think if you talk to any of the coaches that have coached for him or the players that have played for him, I personally coached Von Miller and, know Chris Harris very well, two of the key figures on that great defense that, won the Super Bowl. And, Sean mentioned it, the reputation that he has and standing the test of time in this league, which is so difficult to do. So I have just so much respect for him. But I really look at this opportunity as a beginning. It's a beginning for us moving forward. And in the NFL, every year is a new year. But what's exciting is the foundation that's been laid here by Sean and all these other coaches, by our personnel people, by our ownership. There's such a great foundation in place, and I'm looking forward to getting started.
Will you guys play a 4-3, 3-4? What kind of scheme do you have in plan?
Yeah, well, Sean talked about it. A lot of it's, predicated on the players, but structurally, our systems, from a personnel standpoint, there'll be a lot of carryover. With Vic, we've been a 3-4 structure, but we play a lot of different groupings. But as an offense or a defense, you got to have a framework of where your guy's going to meet. And so I think that's going to be the comforting thing for our players is they're going to be performing a lot of the same jobs, a lot of the same roles. There's none of those wholesale changes that happen at other places. So I think that there'll be a comfort level there with the players, knowing they're going to be doing a lot of the same things, but hey, maybe schematically, situationally, technically, there may be some nuances that'll be different.
I know guys are kind of coming and going, but have you had a chance to meet many of the players, particularly Aaron Donald or Jalen Ramsey?
Yeah, that's the exciting thing as a coach. They don't call you coach without players, and been able to reach out to a bunch of these guys. But Aaron and Jalen are certainly two of the guys that I've been able to talk with. I haven't gotten Aaron in person yet because he's back in Pittsburgh, but my twin brother lives in Pittsburgh, so and I'm from Cleveland, so we kind of share that background. I know a lot of his high school coaches kind of know his story, growing up from Penn Hills, and I think that's kind of exciting for me because, I talk, that when you talk to people at Penn Hills, they talk about the 17-year-old Aaron Donald, not the NFL MVP, so I kind of have a background on him. And and Jalen Ramsey, I'm really good friends with some of his college coaches. So at Florida State, so was able to get a head start with him. But there's been a number of players that I've been able to meet, passing through Michael Brockers, Sebastian, Joseph Day, Clay Matthews. There's been a lot of guys, and that's always the fun part as a coach.
Kevin?
Go ahead, get Kevin, Gary.
Sean, I wonder, yeah. I wonder if you could talk about Kevin.
Yeah.
And what went into the decision to name an offensive coordinator, how it'll work between you and him.
Yeah, so we've had so I have always, Kevin and I got to meet each other actually a handful of years back at the QB Collective at Westlake High School when I was working with the Redskins, and we immediately clicked, and we kind of had a lot of similar connections. And then, he ends up being in Washington, keeping in touch with those guys. And then I've always watched him from afar. I'm a fan of coaching. I've been really impressed with when he was a player, and then the seamless transition that he's made into coaching, his mastery of the position. But then when you talk big picture perspective, it's not just the quarterback position. It's all 11 on offense. It's all 11 on defense. Understand rules, responsibilities. But just the charisma, the presence, all those things were things that excited you about getting an opportunity to work together. And we've operated under a very similar structure before, Kevin. Our first year when Matt LaFleur was in that same role, those guys, when you look at what Coach Cromer, what Shane Waldron, those guys will continue to play instrumental roles. And really, it's always a collaboration of the coaching staff and how we formulate the best game plan to really attack the opposing defense and ultimately put our players in the right spots with our weekly rhythm, and then how that translates to that 3.5-hour window. But his ability to communicate, his big picture is, I think it's going to be a great, opportunity for Jared to work with somebody like him because of some of the things that, he's done that maybe I haven't gotten exposed to. So I'm really excited about learning from him, working together, and us positively pushing each other to ultimately figure out what's the best version of the 2020 Rams offense and how does that look as we continue to try to put that together with our players in mind. But all these guys, and when you add John Bonamego into it, you'll feel the energy, the passion that all three of these guys have for the game of football. And I think that's what will get the players excited about coming in here every single day because of the juice that they bring, the type of work that they're putting into these meetings, and that'll draw confidence from our players, and then most importantly, the ability for these guys to connect with the guys.
Sean, kind of a similar question about John, but when you guys connected, what made him the choice when you were looking to fill that special teams?
Yeah, so I met John a handful of years ago through Matt LaFleur. They had known each other through some mutual connections. He's got a bunch of great experiences to draw on, having been a head coach, been a coordinator at this level for a long time. And then when you really spend some time and you talk football, the passion, I think you want to see a genuine, authentic love for the game, the competency, and then, when you do the background and you really talk about people and you do the vetting process, all the things that come back on these guys, you're checking all the boxes. And I think when you look at the type of culture that we want to try to be able to embody and create day in and day out, these guys are perfect examples of that. It's always about the people. The people make the place, and the people are always any organization's greatest asset, and that's why I'm so excited about working with them, building these relationships that we talk about, and watching them lead our players. But I think it's the success, the consistency. You look at the production they had under his guidance and leadership in Detroit in this last year. Really good stuff. He's got innovative things to be able to implement. He's got an ownership on situational football, which in a lot of instances, especially for the head coach, you rely on your special teams core. Again, checking all the boxes, what you look for, but most importantly, it's about, the type of human beings these guys all are.
Sean, just going through the list of coaches, there isn't one that's explicitly labeled as quarterback's coach. How's that going to be handled?
Yeah, so in a lot of instances, Lindsay, Kevin will assume those roles working with those guys, but, whether it's, a Liam Cohen that'll be in that room, Shane will still have some interaction, but ultimately, really, Kevin will take on the typical responsibilities of a quarterback coach, if you will, very similar to what Matt had done a couple years ago.
Kevin, so how do you see this role? I mean, I know watching from afar, you saw what Matt LaFleur did and was able to do here in Parlay.
He's not leaving after a year, hopefully, Gary, all right?
How do you see how do you see yourself fitting into that role?
Yeah, I think, recalling the experiences of being in the coordinator role with a head coach as the play caller before, you can really find roles where you can just assist that head coach. And Sean will obviously be somebody that, having the relationship with before will aid in that process. But at the end of the day, it's just being an extension of him. And it takes a lot to do that. The experience and the success that this offense has had, you really want the players to look at you as an extension of the head coach, because when you stand up in front of them, you talk to them, you want them to respect you the same way that they respect a head coach that obviously has developed a culture and put together a program here where people want to be a part of it. And I was no different. This is a place that when this opportunity came about, you look at and you can't get here fast enough just because of the type of role, the type of coaches. Obviously, the quarterback had a lot to do with it for me as well. But just going back to it, just the ability to make his job, that is the most difficult job. People talk about the quarterback being the hardest position in sports. I think being an NFL head coach as a play caller could rival that in its own ways. So I want to assist that. I want to help in any way, shape, or form, but also fit in with a great group of coaching staff, a great group of coaches on this staff, and really figure out how to help make it the best possible version of an offense in 220.
John, we've talked about, Brandon replacing Wade, but you're coming into a situation where, Hunter, the kicker who's a free agent, but the snapper, so a group that's been together for a long time with one coordinator. So what's kind of the challenge for you coming in for that kind of thing?
I think that just learning them, their routine, them learning me, communication. I've already done my homework on those guys. A lot of those guys I looked at, coming out of the draft. I mean, I had a pretty good relationship with Johnny before he signed here. I was in Jacksonville at the time, and we took a kid by the name of Brian Anger instead. But, I remember those conversations. Those guys are like any other position. They want to be coached. They want to get better. And it's really working with them and, establishing a rapport and routine, learning what they can do and what they do well, and, try to keep them out of, like any other player, try to keep them out of situations or asking them to do things that they don't do well. So, the number one takeaway there is communication.
Sean, what about Skip Pete in terms of what went into your decision to make a change there?
Yeah, really, in a lot of similar instances, you talk about, more than anything, I think it's about the gratitude you have for, Wade and Skip, Gary. It was more than anything, we decided to go ahead and move in a different direction, but you can't deny the success that he's had over his coaching career and the production that the backs under his guidance and leadership have had. So I think that's the most important thing to recognize, and there's a reason why, Dallas acted quickly. They got a good one in him, and, very fortunate for the 3 years that we did have together. And then I'm excited about Thomas Brown coming in and hopefully helping us out.
Sean, with Thomas Brown, you mentioned you've had a previous connection to him. He also has a lot of Georgia connections.
Yes.
Does Todd have a relationship with him? Do you know?
They know each other. When Thomas went back to coach at Georgia, so he played there, spent a year, as a kind of a strength intern, then got into coaching where he was at Marshall, Wisconsin, went back to Georgia, then Miami, Florida, and now he's been at South Carolina. So they didn't cross over when Thomas spent some time there, but they do know each other. That Georgia running back fraternity is a pretty special one. I mean, you look at the production, but when you guys meet Thomas, you'll be really impressed. You feel his presence, you feel his knowledge of the game, and more than anything, he earned the right to be here because he's a great coach. And he and I really, there was a possibility when you first go and you're interviewing for head coaching opportunities, you have a list of projected coaches. And, Skip was in place and felt really good about continuing that relationship. But Thomas is somebody that we've always kind of kept in touch, and there had maybe been a chance if the circumstances and the timing worked themselves out, for his family and his situations, and this year so happened to be that year. So I'm excited about being able to work with them.
Wonder what you took away from seeing how the playoffs and the Super Bowl played out, how the Rams
Yeah.
which you see a lot of.
Yeah, I think it's one of those deals. It's easy to have all the answers and no accountability when I'm sitting on the couch, it's not fun. It's not fun to watch, but I think, I'm a fan of the game, and I'm excited and motivated and really, I would say, more rejuvenated and reinvigorated than I've ever been since I first got here. And that's a reflection of these men up here, the excitement about getting back with our players and really attacking this season by strategically taking it a day at a time and understanding, all right, let's really look inwardly at what are the things that we can do to be better. And I think you can have a tendency to overreact as well, because the easy excuses are to say how close we were, all right, but let's really look inwardly. Let's figure out how each person can do their job a little bit better and what are the things that we can do. And if, in fact, we do those, all right, it will hopefully lead to a more consistent product, a better opportunity for our players to be at their best in those 3.5-hour windows so that we can achieve some consistent production, some play, and then I think the results will follow if the process and the ability for everybody to have that ownership and accountability is consistent on all levels.
Let's get a couple more, guys.
Have you hired anyone or have anyone lined up to replace Ted Rath yet?
We're in the process of accumulating those names, Lindsay, so we have not hired that position. We've got some, really qualified candidates that we'll be bringing in as, we'll talk to some guys at the end of this week, and then starting next week, we'll really get into that. And I'd like to say that hopefully at some point after that combine, or, if you meet somebody before, in the next month, you'd like to be able to kind of finalize that decision.
And then, because I know when we met with you at the end of the season, you're obviously going to take some time to evaluate the staff and whatnot, but did you anticipate that there'd be kind of this much turnover on your staff after a 9-7 season?
Yeah, I would say this. It feels like a lot because of the significance of these roles, Lindsay, but we still have 14 coaches in place that have been foundational pieces. You got 5 new guys that we're talking about, and the one thing that's so great about all 3 of these guys is, even though they've got the coordinator title, they're interested in being a part of something bigger than themselves. And how can we come in and add value to the entire unit, offense, defense, special teams? And that to me is what's great, because you want to be able to bring in a competitive staff that also balances each other out. And I think one of the things that's been consistent with all 3 of these guys, as they're getting familiar with the other coaches that they're working with, there is an ability to work with others that I think is so important, and the ability to work in unison for the collaboration. You have these structures and different things like that, but it's the power of, all right, how can we identify everybody's roles, responsibilities, give clarity, but also make sure that there's legitimate value. We have that with all of our coaches. These guys are going to continue to add value to the entirety of the unit. But I think it can feel like a lot, Lindsay, and certainly you don't take for granted, but I think it can be a good thing, too, where you bring in some fresh new perspectives. And what I like as much as anything is, you like a good a challenge of, hey, all right, maybe I see it a little bit different, and let's find out what's the best way to do it. It doesn't matter who's right, it's what's right. And that's the approach these guys take, and that's why you're excited to add a lot of people that, you become the company you keep. And I know I'm going to be a better coach for having been around these guys, the people that we're bringing in, and the 14 coaches that are already in place that are going to continue to do a great job for us.
We get 2 more, guys.
You mentioned being rejuvenated, invigorated.
Yeah.
When you came in, Wade came in, veteran coach. John Fossil was in place, so the veteran coach.
Yes.
This is kind of on you now. This is your staff.
Sure.
You feel like that you finally have full control of everything that's,
Oh, I would never look at it like that. I think that you felt fortunate to have 2 great leaders like that in place. And now I'm looking at 3 great leaders, in addition to the other guys that have already been in place. I wouldn't necessarily look at it like that. I think, there's a foundation that's been established that Brandon's coming in, and he's going to have the ability to work with, you look at Joe Barry, you look at Chris Shula, you look at Eric Henderson, Thad Bogardus, Aubrey Pleasant, Ejiro Evero. Those are great coaches that have been here for a while, that they're going to be a part of that as we figure out what's the best way to make our defense great. You look at our special teams, some of the continuity we have at the position where it's the players. Johnny Hecker's leadership, Jake McQuaid. Obviously, a lot's made about Greg being a free agent, but you've got some foundational pieces that you hope can help sustain, and then let's see if we can push the envelope and get even better. And it's the same thing with Kevin. We've got the continuity on the offensive side of the ball. So while there are new guys coming in from a leadership perspective, there's still a lot of good things that we have going on, and I think it's important not to stray too far away from we didn't achieve the things that we want to. We'll never shy away from the expectations, and we expect to go in and expect to win and try to compete to the best of our ability every single day, and we'll never apologize for not achieving the results that we didn't get last year. But I think there's an excitement about the opportunity to respond and to get better and to use each year as a new year. You say it, Gary, but I would say for myself personally, even if you say it, do you really believe it? And I think now having 3 years of experience to really draw on, if you really believe it, then you don't take for granted the foundational things that we did do in year one, really putting in the time to develop and cultivate the relationships. And I think in some instances, when I look at myself, I've gotten away from that, not necessarily just last year, but really for 2 years. And we might have had better results going to the Super Bowl, but if you said, are you really dedicating the time that you want to for the expectations that I have specific to what we want to be able to do with your player interaction, the real foundational relationships, being present with the coaches and bringing a consistent juice and authentic energy and excitement about what the day brings, those are the things that, I'm hopeful will not just be said now, but those are things that I can feel good about. Hey, we're week 9, week 12, week 13 in the season, and because of the people that you're around, that's what enables you to feel that way and be excited about attacking the opportunity and really the blessing that you have to be in this role. I mean, when you look at the amount of different people that reach out when some of these roles open up, it does give you a perspective and appreciation for how special and unique it is to not only work in a great organization, under Mr. Kroenke's guidance and leadership, but to really be able to do it at the highest level in the NFL and how precious those opportunities are.
Last one.
Looking at the roster, how much change do you expect, relatively speaking, knowing what you do about what you want and maybe what's possible?
Yeah, a lot of those things are what we're going through right now. And we've got a lot of guys that are free agents that are very important pieces that we want to be able to get back. In some of these instances, 31 other teams have a say, and there is an element of what you can do within the framework of ways of onboarding and re-signing, whether it's free agency, trades, draft, acquisitions. So we're looking at all those avenues, and we're in the process of collaborating with Les and his group, working with the coaches, and really this kind of starts now that you kind of get your coaching staff finalized. The next phase of the off-season program and where we really start working is studying yourself, implementing the schemes, and then most importantly, figuring out how we put together the most competitive team, not necessarily just acquiring talent. Okay?
So
Thanks, guys.
We'll have Coach O'Connell and Coach Staley